Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is actor Ed Trotta and author Laura Wolfe. Author-actor Ed Trotta was born and raised in New York City. He went to St. Ursula, Fordham Prep, and graduated from the University of New Hampshire. He's written children's books. He's written for stage, TV, and films. He's also appeared on stage, TV, and in films. After university, why didn't you go to New York? Or did you go to New York?
New York was my hometown. It's
So
where
did you
I
go
was
back to
born,
act?
so it was like going back home.
Did you?
Yeah, because that's where all the work was had. You noticed before, the University of New Hampshire, all the schools were parochial schools.
Yes.
They were all Catholic schools.
I know.
No girls in my class ever. That's why I got into theater, I think, was to meet girls.
But New Hampshire was a
But New
tiny
Hampshire.
little place, wasn't it?
No, New Hampshire was a beautiful campus. That's why I went to the University of New Hampshire. And I wanted the country. I was ready for the country, because I was born and bred in New York and got out of the country. It got out to the country.
To the country.
And then on graduating went back. To
So
look
when you
for-
went back, you actually were going to go into theater?
Oh, yeah.
What was
yeah.
your first break?
First break. Well, I guess that would be Godspell was the first.
Oh, is that right?
Primary, but the first big show I did.
You went right to Broadway?
Well, first the national tour.
The national
The
tour?
national tour in Chicago. It was a sit-down company in Chicago.
Did you sing and dance?
When I have to, I sing and dance.
So tell us who this is.
That's me with Victor Garber in a later production. Originally, my first job was to understudy Joe Mantegna as Judas.
Is that right?
And they asked me to be there. Can you be in Chicago tomorrow at 1? I said, of course. And when I got there, they said, you'll be on for Joe next Tuesday.
So he was in Godspell?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Oh. So were you writing at the time when they called you for Godspell?
Was I writing?
Writing book.
Well, I've always enjoyed writing. When in high school, I wrote for the yearbook and that kind of stuff. I don't think I got serious about writing until I moved here in '87, and there was a writer's strike. And I thought, well, someone's got to do it, and let me see what will yield, Let me take these off, by the way.
Oh, good.
Because this is not a Hollywood affectation, these shades. I just wore them because this is how you saw me last.
On stage as Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
At the LA.
At the end, at the Los Angeles Repertory Company.
Los Angeles Repertory.
Thank you for coming to that show, by the way.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was very interesting. I wish I would have seen you on Broadway in Equus, which you were in.
Yes.
And then you also did...
It was the Sweet Bird of Youth national tour that brought me out here.
Oh, is that what brought you out
in
here?
'87 with Lauren Bacall.
Oh.
At the Amundsen.
Betty, my friend.
Is she?
She's
Yes.
great.
Yeah, she
that
is.
voice, the two of you with your deep voices must have been fabulous.
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't her leading man. I had a small role ushering her on and off as the state trooper, but I also understudied a couple of other roles, so it was a job to get me out here. And then it was pilot season, so I stuck around.
You did 7.5 years of touring, national tours.
Mm-hmm.
What were they?
Well, Godspell was a success for a while. So between jobs, there was always a Godspell company going on, and also Equus was that first was a national tour, and I toured with Hair for a while.
Oh, you did. So you really did sing. Did you sing?
Well, I didn't train to sing. I didn't really want to sing. I wanted to be a classical and innovative actor. But I did do coffee house stuff when I was in college, with a guitar.
That's what I was going to ask you, because you did a lot of roles on TV and in film. What kind of roles did you do? Were they classic acting or like Broadway stage?
Well, mostly villains. In TV and film, out here, because I'm dark, I'm consigned essentially to villainy, which is fine. They're more interesting characters. And on the stage, I think of almost every role as classical.
So I'm going to just go through, because I have a couple of these photographs.
This is Sherlock Holmes. I learned a few notes on the violin in order to close the act. People didn't think I was going to play because I would pluck it and tune it a little bit until they were convinced, he's not going to play. The lights are going to come down.
Did people know Sherlock was a
violinist?
Uh-huh.
It's pretty well known that was his
and this
instrument
one,
of choice.
which I love.
This is Dracula, and this was a production photo. We posed on a mausoleum in the local cemetery. This was at Theater by the Sea. And I enjoyed Dracula very much.
Did you write any of these pieces that you were in?
Not that we're mentioning, no.
Okay, that we mentioned.
And
Cyrano
de Bergerac, Without the Nose. This was also a shot taken after a performance at the Roundhouse Theater.
You also acted in Tartuffe, which is a classic, always coming and going, right?
Sure, Moliere.
Always.
Very popular.
This one I love because it's the Man from La Mancha. Man of La Mancha.
I could have done that one forever. That was a very gratifying, but very difficult for one who doesn't consider himself a singer first. I'm an actor, singer, dancer.
But you're
we
so
put them
tall.
In preference.
So this would be perfect,
Oh,
right?
it was a good character type for me, sure. And I studied the Cervantes, the etchings in the original books for the look. Legendary characters, these. That's why I chose these to show you, to bring you.
Do you have to do certain things with yourself? Do you change your posture? Do you change your voice?
Yes.
I mean, for like Man from of La Mancha.
Well, there were pictures to study. There were postures that he took, and actors work from the inside out or the outside in. It almost doesn't matter. Sometimes the physicalization will affect your inner life, your subtext. Sometimes the way you're feeling will affect your posture and your move. So
and the people in the audience feel that. They start feeling the way you're coming through. Does it matter who's directing you in any of those kind of situations?
Oh, it always matters who directs. Always matters who directs. I've been directed by John Dexter, Michael Blakemore, some of the best.
Yeah.
Peter Schaffer in Equus came in on occasion to give us notes, very different. John Dexter was a iron fist. Peter Schaffer, even though he wrote it, was with a
I was
feather.
going to say he wrote it. So did he come and continue to check on it every now and then?
He would, but he had faith. He had faith in the director, and so. But directors and writers always have it's just traditional for them to have differences, shall we say. And that was interesting working with John Herzog at the Los Angeles Repertory Company on this on the Abraham Lincoln piece, because I wrote the piece. So the writer in me had a different relationship with him than the actor in me.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about, because you did this Abraham Lincoln character, which you wrote for the LA Repertory, which is one of the oldest theaters
It is. They've been around
here,
since the early
it?
60s.
And John Herzog is an actor himself.
Right.
And do you think that brings something to the director's point of view?
I think so, because I also have directed on occasion, and it's a challenge for us actors who direct have to keep themselves from jumping up on the stage.
Well, that's what
doing the blocking and running the other guy's lines, and I'll do that. You know, John was very good about that. The first time he did that,
That's why I wondered. That's why I wondered if you've written the play, you're acting in it, you know all about this character. Well, we'll talk about Lincoln. 2 miles a penny. 2 miles a penny. That's so hard for me. I know the story that he went.
It's
to
a reference
return,
to the,
he walked, what, 6 miles?
He walked 6 miles to return 3 cents to a woman.
Yeah. So it's 2 miles a penny.
2 miles a penny.
Which was on the stage here. And you were on the stage the whole time, 2 hours, something like that.
It's a one-man show. And the other characters that appear are either imaginary or they're in another room, or sometimes I would play the other characters, as in the case of the auction scene.
And you're talking about Lincoln today.
Yes, that's why I ended up having to write the play. I didn't want to have to write a play, but there's a very useful Herbert Mitgang play. I think it's simply called Abraham Lincoln, which for one man. But it didn't give Lincoln a cognizance past his death, and that was something that evidently I needed to do.
So you were actually talking about what happened after you died as Abraham Lincoln and things that happened in the world.
Yes.
Or things that happened during your times that you clarified.
Well, he's come back for one reason or another. He's not even sure. He's not even sure, but he knows he has a very limited amount of time and with an assembly of U.S. citizens of the 21st century to accomplish something, to impart something. And what it turns out to be is this issue of legend, that it's more important to consider that a man accomplished these things.
You talk to the audience. You talk to the audience. Do they ever talk back to you?
They haven't yet.
Oh, I wondered about that.
I'm waiting for that to happen. It will, because I ask, are there any takers here that Mount Rushmore is my favorite monument?
Yes.
And
so I expect someone to talk to you.
Yeah, someone might say, yeah.
You also talk about my pictures on the $5 bill. I didn't get on. My picture wasn't shown as much as
Samuel P. Chase, who was on the $1 bill.
Who was on the $1 bill.
Was on the $2.
But he's so this guy goes in his pocket when I was there, and he looks. He looks to see if what he has, and then he pulls a penny out because you talk about the penny.
The penny, I consider probably Lincoln's favorite tribute.
So do you feel all of this going on in the audience?
I'm aware of it. I'm hoping that people are.
Because they're thinking.
Are responding to that. And I think it's when I, as Lincoln, say, I much prefer the original portrait to the one being employed now on the $5 bill. My expression seems to have taken on an element of cynicism. I think that's why people look and say, oh, does he look cynical?
Oh, is that why? Because he does. He was pulling it out and looking. Now, you start out as Lincoln. We're going to do we're going to do a little reverse here before we go, before we take the break. And you start out as Lincoln on stage, and wonderful pose. You walk in, the lights go on you, the back is to us, your stovepipe hat is on, and a wonderful figure. Then you do your whole play, and you end up an actor looking like you're looking this way.
I try to end up as one of us. The whole end of the play is about preferring to dissolve into the mass of humanity.
And show us what you do. Instead of taking off your things, you're putting on.
I've tried to simplify this so that it can happen with some alacrity. I did a little bit of foundation work before I came here and put a little bit of shadowing on. I don't know that could even read. So that all I would have to do is add the mole, his signature mole, and I have already.
And you use this little tiny camera on stage. I mean, this little tiny mirror. Excuse me.
I do. To take things off, it's very easy, and I hope that will last for the duration of your show. And I also put a little spirit gum on this beard. I hope it's still fresh enough to be.
Do you jet your chin out?
No.
Do you jet your chin out a certain way? Because it seems like this just fits so, gives you this character.
Well, I've worn this and it's gone on and off often enough now that, let's see, I'm putting this on really quickly.
Yes.
I generally take about an hour and a half.
I wondered about that before the show.
To put the makeup on. Because it's an important part. To look correct is integral, of course. So.
And all the time you're taking off, you're talking.
I'm talking about the penny and why it's his favorite. For its modesty as our base unit of currency, for its simplicity, and spirit for refusing to become obsolete. You know, there have been a lot of movements to get rid of the penny because it's kind of useless.
Right. And then you tell why they don't want to get rid of it, just because
it's as dependable as taxes. As long as there are taxes, I think there will be the penny. And it's also a good-natured coin because of the give a penny, take a penny exchange that we have going on now.
The other thing is, when you open the second act with the Gettysburg Address, and is that it opens with that, right?
Well, we start at Mount Rushmore, but we get to
you get to that.
We get to the Gettysburg Address pretty quickly because it is just 12 sentences that he said at the time. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but the world remembered the Gettysburg Address because it's one of the most beautiful pieces of.
It's amazing, and
war.
It sounded so great when you were saying it. It just
thank you.
It just unfolded. I mean, it was like what brilliant writing, you know? Oh, maybe
well, that's
while
our
you're
president's
putting your,
writing.
maybe when you're putting your jacket on, I'm going to show this picture of how you actually looked on stage.
Okay,
and you're
I'm
putting
just
your
about
watch
there.
on.
I guess the jacket is...
Can you put the jacket on too?
I can get that on.
I think the great thing is, yeah, perfect. There we are. And we have, what do you call that?
This is a stovepipe
It is a
hat.
stovepipe.
It's not a silk top hat.
But it will survive. It will serve.
And your voice changes?
Well, my voice as Lincoln is not accurate. Lincoln's voice was a high, trumpeting, and with a severe backwoods accent. I don't think it would have been pleasant to listen to for an hour and a half.
I see.
If this had been a play where I was one of an ensemble, then for the sake of showing the difference, I think I would have tried for that. But in recreating a historical or legendary character, I think it's important also to fulfill the image, and I don't think we wanted to hear Lincoln talking like that for an hour and a half, which is probably more accurate.
Well, we wouldn't have heard you for that long, but we're so glad you came on.
Right. You wouldn't have
Thank
listened.
you, Ed Trotta.
My pleasure.
And thank you for being and transforming yourself into this character. And thank you for watching. Don't go away, because we'll be right back with author Laura Wolf. Hi, welcome back. I'm Joan Quinn. I'm with author Laura Wolf, who was born and raised in New York. She earned a Bachelor of Arts in English from the University of Chicago, and she has a master's from New York University Film School. She's written for television and film. Is that what a degree in English does for you?
It's one of the many things it could do for you if you wanted it.
Is that what it was? Or was it film school that got you there?
I think it was just a strange little road I took for myself. I don't think there was any rhyme or reason with regard to the degrees.
Is that right?
Yeah.
When you went to film school, were you going to be in film?
Well, I wanted to be a director.
Oh, you did?
So I was in the directing program, and I really thought that's what I wanted to do. And the more time I spent there, the more I realized I really loved writing. So that's when I segued into writing.
And you were writing some sitcoms?
Right. I developed some shows for some of the studios, half hours.
Right from New York? Or
no, here. I'd already moved to Los Angeles. And sort of one thing led to another, and I ended up in books. So go figure.
Oh, here. I mean, we're here because you just wrote Diary of a Mad Mom-to-Be and Diary of a Mad Bride. But I thought we'd lay a little groundwork on how we got to these books.
Sure.
What else were you doing at that time? Or what was it, about 10 years?
It was a little less than 10 years, yeah. And
Which is about what happens, right? By the time you find yourself, you take a few jobs.
Absolutely. You take a few jobs to support yourself while you're practicing your craft. And yeah, so I was doing odd jobs, part-time work, basically.
When you were trying to be what?
We're trying to write sitcoms from New York,
oh, I see.
which was not working. Everyone advised me to move to Los Angeles.
I see.
This was before the explosion, well, mini explosion, I'll use explosion, the term lightly, of production in New York, which relative to what it was then, 10 years ago, there was almost nothing in New York.
Yes.
So I moved out to Los Angeles and continued to write, and finally things started to happen.
How'd you get jobs on sitcoms?
What happened was I developed, basically what happened was I was writing them, I was meeting some people, and in the middle of all this I had an idea for my first book. So I said, I'm just going to stop, I'm going to write the book. So I wrote the book, I didn't have an agent.
And the first book was Diary of a Mad Bride.
Right.
Okay. So how did it come up? So this is how it came about?
Believe it or not, this is my circuitous route to where we are now. So I wrote this book, and people were reading it, and they were loving it. I didn't have an agent, it didn't have a publisher. And along the lines, it got over to 20th Century Fox, and they called me in and they said, hey, we're not interested in this property, it's obviously a novel, but do you have any ideas for half-hour shows that are similar to this in tone? And I said, sure. I walked in, I sold an idea, And it's
about what? From the Bride book?
Yeah, it was based on a character similar to this. Bride book.
Amy, your character?
Yes.
Was it
based on? It wasn't based on her. It was a totally new group of people. But it was the same tone. It was for the same demographic, for 20 and 30 and 40-year-olds, and same tone. It was very comedic.
Did they produce it?
No, but it went into development there. They bought the idea. We wrote the script. And from that, things started to roll. And
well, this somehow, I know it's a novel, but it somehow doesn't seem like a novel to me. It seems like it's totally your life.
Right. I get that a lot.
I think the funny thing is when one of the reviews called it Bridezilla. I mean, how did you take that?
Oh, I think that's great. I mean, and that's what I tried to tap into with these books, the whole idea that, we have to take ourselves seriously to a certain extent, but if we don't stop and laugh, then we just become laughable.
Well, let's talk about Mad Bride first. What did people say about that? What were your friends saying about it? Did they think it was very authentic, or did they think you were using them?
Oh, no. No, I've been very respectful about the people I know. Because
have you?
I would hate to be the subject, the fictionalized version in someone else's book.
But usually they don't realize. They always go,
Fair
oh,
enough.
what a horrible person that was.
Fair enough. But no, I mean, I think what I've enjoyed mostly with my readers and my friends as well is that they've really been able to relate to my books, which I think is great. So. Did
you take any parts from Diary of a Mad Bride and mix them with a Mad Mom-to-Be? Well, is there a crossover?
There is, in that it's a sequel. I mean, obviously,
it's the same person.
Diary of a Mad Mom-to-Be is a sequel to Mad Bride, so we have the same characters, and you see how their lives are evolving as they go from one major life event to the next.
I think it's funny because Amy Thomas says, I'm only keeping my name in this, and then she all of a sudden wants to be a mom, and she's got her husband's name, right?
Right. I mean, that's actually a really big issue for women. A lot of the women I know is that they're very comfortable keeping their maiden names, and then all of a sudden when the issue of a child comes into play, they want to feel like they're closer to their child. They want to feel like there's a family unit, and the idea of what your name is becomes you look at it a different way.
You don't think about it at that point.
Right.
And as you talk about in the opening of Diary, it's just the two of you, and you're looking for a job. Or not you, she.
It's all right.
I'm sure it was you.
I get it all the time. Well, I'll tell you what I tell people. I write from what I know with a dash of hyperbole thrown in for good measure.
That's what I thought. Well, once you laid the groundwork and you were looking for a job, then all of a sudden your clock starts ticking. You're going, people are telling you, when are you going to get pregnant? And you say, well, I don't hear my clock ticking. What are you talking about? When am I going to get pregnant? And then all of a sudden it starts, I guess.
I think this is a very common experience for women. You find yourself, if you're fortunate enough to be in a profession where you're very happy and you're really pursuing your dream or goal, and even if you're not, you can stop all of a sudden and say, look at the time. Where are my priorities? What do I want to do? And whether you want to think about it or not, the fact is that maybe it is time for you to start having children if you want, And I think that takes a lot of us by surprise.
Were your friends doing that? Were your friends talking about these things?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So were you commiserating, or were you the opposite of commiserating?
Well, I think it was a lot of, there were a lot of things going on. I think a lot of us really felt, we didn't want to be pressured into something.
But it wanted it to come by
But we didn't want to miss the opportunity to do it. And, to find the balance between those two things. And I also had friends that had no interest in having children.
And did they change?
No.
Oh, they didn't change?
Not a lot of them.
So we get to the book. It's about your first pregnancy. It's about Amy's first pregnancy.
Right.
But in the meantime, you've had another child.
Right.
So you have two kids.
Baby number 2 as of 2 weeks ago.
So you have another child. Did this follow true with your second pregnancy about the way you were writing? Or did it follow through Amy's second pregnancy the way she was writing about her first pregnancy? Or did this combine both pregnancies? Or?
Well, for Diary of a Mad Mom-to-Be, I really drew upon my own experience as well as those of friends. So it's not specifically my experience, but there are definitely things that we went through in both pregnancies.
That were the same?
Absolutely.
Or different?
The same. I was just paying more attention the second time.
Yeah. What did people talk about pregnant? Like, how did they look at you as pregnant? I know you addressed that in the book.
It's funny. People like to talk about women and specifically pregnancy in celestial terms.
Exactly. Really?
You know, we glow, we need to be pampered, we're angelic, you know, there's this sort of a glow thing about them.
Do you think that's true?
No, the reality, please. The being pampered part's really great. Let me tell you, that's great. And that should be done. I advocate that. But beyond that, I mean, pregnant women have excessive gas, you know, our temperature fluctuates, we can't get into hot tubs, we can't have sushi. You know, there are a lot of things going on that are not so celestial.
That's what I marked in my book, because I thought it was so funny, the list that you started with, things no one tells you about pregnancy. Right. And it's a list of 15 things, and it ends with difficulty breathing. And then at the end, you keep adding to that list, right. and at the end you have 21
That's right.
things.
21 things no one tells you about.
Adding and adding and adding, but I think the last one, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It really sums it up.
Yeah.
It was great.
And I believe that. I mean, that's my experience, at least.
I thought it was so funny. No sushi, no aspirin, heartburn, all the things you were talking about. What's the sequel going to be for Amy?
Well, we're discussing probably her first year of pregnancy, her first year of parenthood.
Oh, parenthood.
You know, the adjustment to being a parent, and the changes we go through during that first year.
Did you ever do stand-up comedy?
I didn't. I have
It's
not.
so funny.
Thank you.
I was like rolling out of bed last night laughing at certain things. I went, but this is so true, you know?
Well, that's where I really feel very strongly that that's where most of the humor is, just in life. The real life moments and things that actually happen to us. There's a commonality among people that we can all relate to these things.
But being able to put it down, I think, is so interesting that you remembered so many of these things and got them down on paper. Because once you start reading them, you go, oh yes, that could have happened, or that did happen.
Well, thank you. Again, I think that if we don't stop and pay attention to these moments, then life just gets too serious.
Well, Laura, let's see how you do in your first year of parenthood.
Thank you.
Come back and tell us.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles, and keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.